Welcome to the Deliverance Project. Here are your hosts, Anthony and Melissa.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Deliverance Project. I'm your host, Anthony.
Hello, I'm Melissa.
We're so glad that you've chosen to join us tonight. Tonight we have an episode where we are going to address a topic that gets thrown at us a lot. It's one of criticism, but on this podcast, we try not to get too much into going back and forth, especially with other Christians. But sometimes a topic will come along that requires us to, I guess, spend some time and clarify, because maybe there's people out there listening that feel this way or have these similar questions. So tonight we're going to dedicate some time to answering the question, is deliverance biblical? Before we get to tonight's episode, we just want to bring up a couple of things real quick. Number one, Melissa is not feeling well. She's got a bug, a cold or something.
Yeah.
So you might hear it in her voice a little bit, but she's a trooper. And I think she'll be fine, but you might hear a little bit of that in her voice. We also wanted to remind you, just please be checking out the Struggle series, our second podcast. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with the struggle.
Yeah.
We have the third book is actually getting really close to being released in hardcover and paperback. And so we actually got the what do they call it? The cover page, the cover art. And we have all of the page layout and everything has been approved. So we'll be getting our copies sometime shortly. And then usually after that, it's about a month and a half or 2 months before it's available for everybody. Sometimes sooner. I don't, publishers are publishers. They do what they're due.
Yeah.
I love Covenant. They've been great to work with on all three of my books. So I'm kind of learning how they do things, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that, we can't control on this end. But I would tell you that just be checking out the Struggle series, because in between book 3, which is coming out in paperback, but has actually been released on our other podcast in its entirety, narrated by me, we're putting out a couple of little spooky stories every week, or one every week for a little while before we start getting into book 4, which I'm going to read as I write. And that's going to be crazy. So check us out at thestruggleseries.com. You could find out all about us there. And even subscribe
Leave some great reviews.
Yeah. So on all of the places you listen, as well as our socials, check us out there as well. There's even a donate button for those of you who are not sure you want to jump into the Patreon side of things with us, but you just want to help us out, keep the podcast going. We appreciate every little bit helps.
Oh yeah.
We're not trying to be rich. We have a job that we do. We make enough money, but we just want to be able to sustain the podcast so we can help as many people as we can. So anything that you can do there helps us out. So check us out on the socials. We're doing that whole thing with our podcast socials, trying to grow it. There's mass followings and all that stuff. We're probably doing it wrong. But we're definitely trying to do that just to grow our audience. So check us out there as well. And if you need prayer for any reason, we're always talking about reading letters on the air, doing interviews on the air. But if you just need prayer, please send us an email at the deliveranceprojectpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to pray for you, either with you or via email, or if you do want to be on the podcast in any way, shape, or form, that's the same place that you would find us at the deliveranceprojectpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And even if you have a great story that is, got a great ending, happy ending, we'd love to hear that as well. We don't want to just...
like the one from last week. Last episode had a great ending.
We don't want to just see the negative. We want to see the positive. And so reach out to us there. Now, speaking of that, Melissa, and we were kind of talking about this before we were recording, another cold night here in Colorado. So we're kind of bundled up and just kind of not doing a whole lot tonight before we were recording. So we were kind of talking about tonight's episode. And as we're trying to grow all of our pages, and you can check out Melissa's pages as well. Go to Melissa Corelli, picture of her pretty face there, kind of a profile view. You'll know it's her by all of the content. But as we're trying to grow our pages, we put a lot of deliverance stuff. I repost a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And on one of the things that we reposted of another deliverance ministry, I got a DM from a guy, and I'm going to read that to you, listeners, and then we're going to use it as a topic. It's something that we've had on our list to cover, but it's definitely something that we want to address,
Mm-hmm.
because with growing your social medias, we're going to find new
Oh
listeners,
yeah.
and some
Hopefully.
might be listening because we've seen that, just to find reasons to criticize us. So let's try
Mm-hmm.
to address this.
Okay.
So let's read this, Melissa. It says in this DM, and I'm not going to name the guy, and I'm not going to name the person that I followed up with on a different post, because I'm not trying to start any wars, because believe me, these aren't the only two people that think this way. There's many
Oh yeah,
Christians
I'm
that think
sure.
this way.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what his DM says. It says, "Stop preaching deliverance. It's not biblical. If you want to go to hell, that's your priority, but stop taking people with you." Then he put Matthew 7:21 through 23. Now, I'm studied the Bible quite a bit, but I don't know every verse by heart. But I knew Matthew 7:21, 23. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's a very famous passage that a lot of religious Christians spit out. And so I'm going to read this, Melissa, and then I'm going to ask what you think about this. So it says in Matthew 7:21, 23, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is not in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name?' And then will I declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" So before I kind of give my commentary, Melissa, what are your preliminary thoughts on somebody who, and so the video, and I don't know if I told you this, but
No, I don't think so.
the video was about a young girl who, they had a video of her doing her deliverance ministry. She went to kind of a famous deliverance minister, and this woman basically prayed over her. And this girl is like literally full-fledged manifesting on the stage, and she is delivered. And then the follow-up, so it wasn't just like a theatrical thing like many of the people in those comments said,
Mm-hmm.
but this girl then at the end of this video was explaining how her life changed. So she looked completely different. She was no longer into promiscuity and drugs, and she would like cleaned up. And
Oh,
then the video ends with her singing in the church band, worship, leading worship at a church.
that's what we want, right?
And so for this person to say this simply because I made a comment about how great that testimony was. So I don't know if he also sent the same message to the actual person who
Who
posted
posted
the
it?
original video, or if because we're called the Deliverance Project, he sent it to us. But what do you think?
Well, I wish I would have seen the video. I'm sorry if I
I'll
missed it.
show
You
it to you
probably should
later,
send it
but
to me.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like if it had a great ending of the story, or you're talking about the
Yeah, I'm
verse.
talking about this guy's comment.
That's just nonsense. I think he's just looking. Like I always say, I try to look at the positive side. I think he's looking for help, or maybe is curious but not curious, or just being mean to us. um, I mean,
Is
we're
it
not.
attention seeking? Is that what you're saying? Kind of like
Yeah, kind of
he's trying to
like,
get somebody's attention?
yeah, because like if I see something that I don't like or agree upon or agree with, I just stroll to the next one. Like I wouldn't if because doing a podcast is a lot of work. Like it's not something that you just sitting here that's easy to do and you just upload something. I mean, it takes us hours to do the podcast. Then you got to upload it. So it's like a part-time job. So I do get upset when sometimes we get negative things and we're trying to speak positive. Like I don't feel that we or say anything negative. We don't bash people. We try to pray for people. We don't judge. We don't criticize. We're always trying to, be that positive side. So just like the episode last week, it had a great ending.
Sure, it
The
did. Yeah.
guy, and now he's saved and he's helping other people, you know.
Mhm.
And so that's my take on it.
Well, what, and I
I'm
appreciate
sorry
that.
if I was rambling.
No, you're doing that's exactly kind of the preliminary thoughts I think a lot of people have
Mhm.
is like, is this guy trying to get attention? Is he seeking like help and doesn't know how to ask? Or is he really one of those religious Christians that believes this? And what, we walk a balance here, and I've had to walk this balance as a vocational minister for years. And I still have to walk it now, even though I don't work for a church,
Mhm.
but there's a fine line between when you defend yourself and when you just let people have their opinions, and then when you do speak up for yourself. What is
Mm,
the level of your engagement? Is because that could go from kindness
exactly, yeah.
to aggressive.
Aggressive. Mhm.
And so what I did is I just responded back saying, it sounds to me like you proof texted a passage of scripture and are basing that on your disbelief of deliverance ministry, because this passage is used by a lot of different religious Christians for a lot of different
Different
reasons.
reasons. Mhm.
I have never heard somebody use this as a way to to say that deliverance ministry isn't true. And so for those of you who are listening who are not sure, what I believe he's saying is the part of the passage that says, "Didn't I prophesy in your name? Didn't I cast out demons in your name?" And God would say, "Get away from me, I didn't know you." So basically he's alluding to the fact that we're not supposed to cast out demons. And that's who Jesus is talking to, these fake prophesy, these fake demonic people. So there's this group of people that doesn't believe in the spiritual gifts. So they don't believe that their people can prophesy. They believe all those spiritual gifts died with the apostles.
Oh, right. Okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was trying to, because I've never heard that
yeah.
been referenced to the Matthew 7:21
Yeah.
either.
And but what he doesn't realize is, and I'll get to this kind of in a second, because the second person that kind of is along this line of thinking, I kind of went down a little rabbit
Oh my
hole.
god.
These people that believe they're called cessationists, they don't they don't understand that the apostle Paul and the apostle Peter were delivering people from demons after the cross.
Mhm.
And so you're trying to say that when all the apostles died, then these gifts died. But there's nothing biblical that says that. There's
Mhm.
and please send it to me. Not proof texted where it could say that. You're speaking definitively that I'm sending people to hell by preaching about
Deliverance.
deliverance.
Mhm.
But here's what I'm saying. It's not biblical. That's just your theory. And I don't believe these people aren't saved. I just believe they don't believe in spiritual gifts, but they believe that people like us aren't saved and that we're going to hell. And that's very
Mhm.
pharisaical, and it's very condescending. But the scariest part to me, Melissa, is that these are people that are ministers of churches or represent themselves to be Christians. So when someone does have a demonic encounter and they go to a church for help and they meet somebody like this, that will generate nothing but hopelessness.
Oh yeah.
And so when
Mhm.
we talk about, or when we read a letter or we talk to
Mhm.
somebody where they say, "Well, I went to the church and they couldn't help me,"
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
because they think like
It does.
this.
Yeah. That
And what
makes
I would
sense.
kindly say is, praise Jesus that you've never actually seen somebody demonized and felt the presence in the room and seen demonic entities and seen people manifest, like people, their faces morphing into like creatures and their nails growing. I mean, those of us who have done this have seen crazy things, but because we don't have the video to show you, and when there are videos to show you, you call it theatrics.
Mhm.
This video I was talking about,
Mhm.
the comments were like this: "Oh, I was in drama class too in high school. Oh, you should win the Oscar." This girl's literally, the video goes like this. She comes to this minister and said, I went to some Christians I knew and asked them for help, and I started manifesting demons, and they freaked out and didn't know how to handle it. So I prayed to God, and he told me to come to you. Can you please help me? So the female deliverance minister starts praying for her, and she flops on the ground. Her eyes roll in the back of her head. Could it be an act? I mean, sure. But to assume that it's all acting, what you're
Mhm.
doing is you're saying that you know that demons interact with us kind of at a backdoor type of, once you're saved, you're good.
You're good.
And so just ignore the
Right.
demons.
Mhm.
But for people that can't, but here's the biggest part. Most of the people that come to us don't know Jesus. And so you're saying that demons don't mess with the Christian. Well, what about if you're not a Christian?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what's your answer? Well, that's the finished works on the cross. And these deliverance ministers just aren't teaching you enough about Jesus. We can't teach these people about Jesus until they're understanding how these demons gained access.
Mhm.
Then you can have a conversation. Once they believe that you are caring and compassionate enough, then they're willing to be honest about the doors they opened, the
Mhm.
sins they
Mhm.
committed. And then you can pray with them to ask God for forgiveness for those things, to repent of those things, to renounce those things. Some people get demons from generational curses and familial demons that have been haunting their families. And we'll get to that a little more in a second, even
Mhm.
Christians.
Mhm.
So, so when I hear stuff like this, it ruffles my feathers a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's a good topic for us to cover because we're asking people to call in with their secrets, with their shame, their guilt, their demonic encounters, their things that they're afraid to be believed. I want our listeners to know that we'll defend you from this.
Mhm. Yep, exactly.
Now let's go to this next guy. Um, because if this guy is saying, the first guy is saying that anybody who's trying to cast out demons has turned away from Jesus, it,
Yeah, that does make
it
sense to
doesn't
me.
make any sense.
Yeah.
You pick one passage, good try, keep going. But here's another guy who is a very, very famous TikToker. I won't mention his name, but I want to. I want to pick a fight with this guy. Um, but
No,
Jesus,
don't do that.
but Jesus told me not to,
Mhm.
and so I won't. But he is a very popular TikToker, and he spits out the passage in 1 Timothy 4:1. And again, you're going to hear proof texting here. And 1 Timothy 4:1 says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teaching of demons." So, what he is saying is because the Apostle Paul is writing to Timothy and says that people will depart from the faith, devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teaching of demons. So, what he is literally taking from that passage is that we are teaching people about
Demons.
demons. It's like,
Uh,
be
yeah.
nice.
uh,
It's like, sir, these people were teaching the ways of
Of
demons
yes.
and the ways of deceitful spirits,
Mhm.
not teaching. What he's saying is we shouldn't be talking about demons and
Mhm.
teaching about demons. That is the most foolish thing in the world. Even Jesus in the Lord's Prayer, which every Christian knows, every Catholic knows.
Mhm.
If you know one prayer, it's "Now I lay me down to sleep," and the second one you know is the Lord's Prayer.
Mhm.
And deliver us from
From
evil.
evil.
So, how are we delivered from evil? Well, his response would be is that those who minister deliverance are teaching about demons, because his argument is we were delivered on the cross from everything. So instead of going into these teachings about demons and deliverance, we should just tell them, well,
Just let it go, it's
just
gone.
accept Jesus and you're good.
You're good.
But it's like,
God, if it was that easy.
if you're right, I could not have said it better. If it were
Not
that
that
easy.
easy.
And what I would tell you is, and this is where I'm going to get a little catty. This guy, he has his little pressed up preppy shirts and a nice fresh ball cap in every video with a little Jesus saying on it, but he's very smug. He's
Mm.
very arrogant the way he talks about a lot of other Christian doctrine. When you're hearing this guy, you literally, so he doesn't just talk about this deliverance, he talks about many other Christian topics. And when you hear this guy, he speaks definitively like he knows the truth. And all of these other
Mhm.
Christians that believe in all of these other quote unquote doctrines are
Mhm.
wrong. He doesn't say, well, some people believe this
This.
and some people
Mhm.
believe that. I don't really like cessationists, but I can understand where they're coming from. And what did I just say? I said, I believe they're saved Christians. We'll all be in heaven. And
Mhm.
if I was wrong and he was right, or he was right and I was wrong, it won't matter. We'll all be at the table with Jesus, kicking it, having a good time. But they don't think that of us.
Mhm.
And when you see that smug, arrogant attitude, it's like, dude, you have a demon of self-righteousness that's
Yep.
driving these videos.
Mhm.
And he would argue and he would try to be slick, but you can't proof text. You can't take a passage like Matthew 7:21 or 1 Timothy 4, and you can't say that these definitively speak against deliverance. Because again, the Bible tells stories where an apostle dropped a handkerchief and somebody touched it and got delivered from a demon. That's in the Bible. That sounds
Mhm.
almost like a magic trick,
Trick.
or
Yeah.
but so this was a big deal. Jesus spent his time on earth. I challenge both of these Christians to go through and see how many times Jesus delivered people from demons that made the Bible. The
Mhm.
Bible says that all the
Right.
things that Jesus did couldn't fit in all the books
Exactly.
that could fill
Exactly.
up the world.
Mhm.
So why was Jesus taking his time to cast out these demons? Well, their argument is, well, because that was pre-cross. And see, that's a good argument because there's some things that were pre-cross, like the law. But
Mhm.
then now that Jesus died and rose from the dead, we're not under the law, we're under grace. That's why it says, we are not saved, by our works, we are saved by grace through faith,
Mhm.
so that none of us can boast because the law was fulfilled. Jesus said, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So their argument is kind of rooted in there, but here's where we get to the roots of it. I want to be angry with people like this, but again, I have to say, praise Jesus, because when they do see it, not only
Mhm.
is their paradigm going to shift, that's the smallest portion of this, Melissa. They are not equipped.
Mhm.
Deliverance ministry, when you first get into this, is terrifying. When you see somebody manifesting on the floor and you kind of think they're acting, that's nothing. When you go to somebody's home and you see shadows darting back and forth down the hallway and nobody's there, and I've told this story before, when I walk into a room that doesn't have doors, it just has archways, and two different rooms of the house enter this dining room, and there's a light outside from the neighbor's spotlight, their motion spotlight.
Mhm.
And when I walked in that room and that room turned pitch black to where I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, when there was no way, there was no doors to close and no windows to close. When you feel that evil and you see that darkness that has no natural cause,
Mhm.
you better be equipped. And so what these people do, in my opinion, Melissa, is I think some of them, and I can't say all of them, but I think some of them are afraid.
Oh yeah,
So
it's
they
yeah, I
ignore
think
it.
mhm.
And so what they do is they find the 5 or 6 stories that you could find easily where things were debunked, or the person obviously looks like they're acting.
Mhm.
But what this guy and the first guy missed is this girl's telling her, this is her
Testimony.
testimony.
Yeah.
She was on drugs, sleeping around, living a horrible, immoral life, suicidal, depressed, the demons telling her to kill herself. She stumbles into this church, finds Jesus, and is now leading worship. Looks completely healthy and different, happy as can be. And what is their response? Like, what is their response to that? Well, that had nothing to do with deliverance. That was just Jesus, and you just accidentally found this? Like, is that what they think? Okay, before we beat this up, I just want to, I guess I better cover one more thing because some of you may stumble upon this guy. Um, he also quotes the second guy that I was talking about. He quotes a passage in Colossians 2:15 where it says he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him, meaning that on the cross that Jesus disarmed the rulers and authorities. And he's saying that we don't need deliverance because the devil has been disarmed. And I just want to I kind of want to put him in a headlock, but I I
Me
just
too.
I just want to say, like, dude, before the cross, the devil had dominion over the earth.
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus died on the cross, he gave dominion back to us through him
Mm-hmm.
if we choose to accept it. That's what this passage means. He disarmed them. See, if you want to talk about pre-cross versus post-cross, Mr. Minister, pre-cross, Jesus lived in a world where Satan had dominion, so much so that Jesus went out and was tempted by Satan in the desert for 40 days. Jesus wouldn't have to deal with that now,
Mm-hmm.
now that he's been resurrected, because the devil doesn't have dominion. Jesus, as a human on earth, had to contend with the ruler of the world,
Mm-hmm.
the ruler and authority, to put it as as Colossians 2:15 says. So when Jesus died on the cross, yes, he was resurrected and did disarm Satan and the demons, but we have to choose to accept that dominion. See, if we truly have dominion and Jesus died on the cross and that's it,
That's
then
yeah.
why do we need to be saved? Why do we need to accept Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to choose to take dominion back over our lives
Exactly.
through Jesus. Then we can fight these spirits.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, the biggest thing that bothers me, and I'm going to do a Google search. I don't know if you're going to hear me typing, but I'm going to type this in just for listeners. Did the apostles cast out demons after the cross? Yes, according to the Bible, Jesus gave his disciples power to cast out demons. The disciples performed exorcisms as part of Jesus' instructions to spread the gospel and heal the sick. So that even says
Exactly.
that delivering people from demons can also help because some ailments are
Mm-hmm.
demonically related. So what is this guy talking about? I simply believe that these people are either afraid of demons, they've never experienced one, they're so caught up in their own doctrine, but who falls between the cracks? And it's what I said. I think people that are actually suffering with demonic encounters,
Mm-hmm.
they being told that they don't know what they're talking about, or being told that what they're experiencing is not real,
Mm-hmm.
or that they're just a bad person. And if they would just F Jesus, Jesus, fix this already. Why are you crying about it, type of thing?
Yeah.
Or more importantly, if you're not a Christian and you go to some pompous, arrogant asshole like this guy, and I said that, like this guy who thinks he knows everything, we can all say, all of us who have been in ministry can say, well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that. But there's many people that have different doctrines. I could defend my doctrine, but I'm not out to destroy people who think differently. I'm
Mm-hmm.
out for all of us Christians to reach as many people as we can. And doctrine has a purpose, but that's not the purpose when you're trying to reach people. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of goes back to that
Exactly.
thing, Melissa, I was telling you when I was in Bible college once upon a time. Um, I had a professor who was a theologian, and he didn't like me because I was a preacher. Because I was going back to get graduate degrees and such, and I was already working in ministry, and I think he liked working with younger students or whatever. So he would pick on me, and I would be like, like what is it that is bothering you? He goes, well, you preachers don't, your doctrine isn't solid. And I'm like, agreed. And could you preach a sermon? Because if you just got up and spit out doctrine with no relatability or
Exactly.
context,
Yeah.
we need
Mm-hmm.
theologians, we need preachers, we need street ministers, we need lay people, we need friends, we need loyal Christian followers who aren't vocational ministers but are still willing to spread the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're teaching that Jesus isn't the Son of God, or he wasn't born of a virgin, all the things in the Apostles' Creed, then yeah, then we can argue doctrine. But if we're arguing what color the carpets are in the church, which is what this nonsense is,
Mm-hmm.
because you're saying that if we're preaching, if we're ministering to people that think they have a demon, that we're demonic and we're teaching them about demons, they already know about demons, jackass. They already know about them in a way that you better hope you or your family never does. And please hear me, I'm not wishing that, but be careful. Be careful being so confident. One of my favorite pastors,
Yeah.
and I'm going to ask you about this comment here. His name is Isaiah Saldivar. He does an amazing sermon. You can find it online. I don't know how you'd look it up, but he does. Is actually on a panel with a bunch of ministers, and he just starts preaching a mini sermon. Gets out of his seat because he's saying, "Stop underestimating the power of demons." Of course, Jesus could squash a demon, but you can't. You can only help people by introducing them to Jesus, praying in Jesus' name, calling on the name of Jesus. But some of you Christians need to stop underestimating the power of these ancient beings who have been around for thousands of years, learning how to mess with us.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to 4 years of seminary and you're smarter than every theologian that ever lived, right? Like you're not a person who got into all of this theological debate stuff in your life, but from a bystander point of view, what do you think of that?
Let me see. I'm kind of speechless. I agree with everything that you're saying. And I mean, there are people out there that just don't. It's so funny how they can believe in other things, but they can't believe in Christians. Like they can't believe in, but they can, um, like we had one episode where, we get picked on all the time. They don't pick on Buddhists. They don't pick on Muslims. They don't pick on, any other religion. But it seems like because we're the true ones. And I just feel like, I don't know, that was a lot. That kind of, I didn't realize that what was said.
Tell me what you think of this. Let's say you're a non-believer
Mm-hmm.
and you have heard how loving and gracious Jesus is, and you heard about this Christianity that brings freedom and salvation. And so you go to these Christians, and nowadays it's everything's online.
Yeah, exactly. I was reading just the
I
other
hope
day.
people are going to attend churches, but let's be honest, a lot of people are getting their sermons and their doctrine online. And so you go to find out about these loving Christians, and here they are fighting.
And it's because of people like this, you're more comfortable, at home where you don't have to, like I saw this, I think it was on the internet or TikTok. I can't remember. I'm not a very social person, not on the social media type. But it was a young lady that was really upset because she went to a church and like she's probably struggling with some things, probably maybe early 20s, 19 or something like that. And, maybe she doesn't have a lot of money. Maybe she doesn't have the right clothes. Maybe she didn't brush her hair, but her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, but she has like natural curly hair like mine, so it kind of gets frizzy if it's not really tamed down. And so it was kind of a little frizzy in the front. But instead of them, accepting her and her coming to the church, asking about Jesus and asking about, you know, how to change her life and, just questions that she has, and they were more concerned about her hair. And they asked her to leave, that the next time that she comes to church, that she needs to be more presentable, that she could at least brush her hair. She was just really upset that um that they, so she felt like, well, where is that come as you are phrase that, a lot of churches say, but when you do come as you are, you can come, but no, come as you are. Like,
Yeah. Like I said, if you're a bystander watching these Christians fight over these quote unquote doctrinal issues, these people don't know what the heck that means. They just want love. They don't want to see all this fighting because it makes no sense to them. Now, again, what do you stand for and what don't you? That can get a gray area sometimes, but for the most part, people have different doctrines, but is the main thing the same? And here's what I would say. If you're one of these people that feels you have some sort of spiritual warfare going on, because I would want to know what these guys believe spiritual warfare is. It's like, well, you have it, but you're just being dumb. Just give it to Jesus and then go to the car wash. Like,
Yeah,
if only it was that easy, like you
Mhm.
said. But if you're one of those people that feels like it, you don't go to that guy. Come to
Mhm.
somebody like us, somebody who's going to believe you. Now, if that guy may have a doctrine on a topic that I'm not schooled in, but he's very schooled in, I would actually send you to him and say, hey, all the stuff about deliverance, just
Mhm.
ignore that
Exactly.
part of him. But this guy is very knowledgeable and skilled in this area.
Mhm.
And so, like, I'll give you an example. I am a psychologist by education, bunch of degrees in the psychology field. My PhD is in a secular school. A lot of my other degrees, all of them, all of my
Mhm.
other degrees are from Christian colleges, seminaries, so on and so forth. But my doctorate is from a secular school. So I have a lot of knowledge in the secular ways of psychology as well as Christian views of psychology, Christian universities with counseling programs that are Christian based.
Mhm.
And that makes me kind of an expert in psychology, but also a Christian. I have seen pastors who have zero psychology experience, zero counseling experience. Their ministry is basically preaching. They're not even good pastoral care counselor or
Mhm.
pastoral care pastors, but they start counseling families and people. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
the scary. Yeah.
dude, that's not your wheelhouse, man.
Mhm.
Like, you're talking to them. So what people do is they get a sermon every time they go see that guy. The sermon is great on Sunday. These people need somebody who's going to listen to them, let them put
Mhm.
their stuff on the table, and then try to guide them as they make changes. Because psychologists and counselors don't change people. We help you change by holding up a mirror and show
Mhm.
you what you're saying to yourself.
Mhm.
If you don't have skill in this area, so these pastors who put this content out, by instead of saying, "Hey, I don't know about that. I don't really believe in that because I've never seen it, and some of my doctrine doesn't work with that." But
That
if
would
you but if
yeah.
you feel you have a demon, I know a very reputable
Mhm.
guy who seems solid and authentic. Go to him. That's
Mhm.
all you have to do.
Yep, that's
But
all we do.
you devote an entire TikTok page to bashing deliverance ministers.
Yeah.
My
Mhm.
first question is, do you know that you have a demon that is telling you to get riled up when these people put out deliverance posts?
Mhm.
Because Melissa said it best. Just keep scrolling, dude.
Mhm.
Do you post on
I mean, there's hundreds of millions of thousands of options.
but when
Choose
you're the
from.
guy that's like, well, I don't believe in this, 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 I don't believe in this. So I'm going to spend my days on TikTok bashing all of these ministries. Do you really think that's biblical? Do you really think that's godly,
Mhm.
dude? Because it's not. But we could beat that up. I probably went a little longer on that than I wanted because I want our listeners to know that that riles us up too.
Yeah, it
And if
does.
you have experienced that, I'm so glad that you're still trying by finding us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we may not be the ministry for you either. The only difference is I don't know everything. Melissa doesn't know everything, and we'll help you get to where you need to be. Because the most important thing is these people don't understand that deliverance ministers, we don't just pray deliverance for someone who's not willing to accept Jesus, because we understand the part of the Bible that says if you cast out a demon and you come and you put your house in order and the demon comes
Yep.
by and sees that it's empty,
T.
the Bible says
Mhm.
empty, but clean and put in order, it
Mhm.
brings seven more worse than itself. And
Mhm.
I heard one pastor say it best. I love it. And I wish I
Mhm.
remember what his name was so I can quote him. But he said, when you kick a demon out, you don't let them pack their stuff. Just like if you were kicking a tenant out, and Melissa and I'll have a story about that in a second, but you don't let them pack their stuff up and go. You kick them out. Well, why does the demon come back to look at its old house to see if it's empty and put together? Because its stuff is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want, he calls it the furniture. But what
Mm-hmm.
he's saying is all the seeds and all the work that demon did on you are
Mm-hmm.
still in you. When you pray deliverance, you have to pray that the demon and all of the roots
Exactly.
that
Yep.
demon, you have to renounce all of those. So when somebody comes and says,
Mm-hmm.
I have a demon, are you willing to accept Jesus? Well, no, I'm not all about that, but they said you can help me with this demon. Oh, I can help you. I can pray this demon out of you probably in 10 minutes. But when you go home,
Temporary fix.
and you feel good for a couple of weeks, and it's going to come with 7 more, I'm not going to be responsible for you being worse than you were before. This is not my philosophy. This is biblical.
Exactly.
And by the way,
Yeah.
why is the gospel writers writing about that passage about a demon coming back to you, pastors on the internet
Mm-hmm.
who say there's
They
no deliverance ministry? Why are they writing about that?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, well, that was the gospel. No, Mark wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark didn't come. Mark was probably around when Jesus was ministry was there, but his gospel came after. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't one of the 12 disciples. So this was after the cross, and he's still talking about Jesus teaching about this. The
Mm-hmm.
teaching doesn't say before the cross, Jesus taught this, but now after the cross, Jesus, that's not what he's
No,
saying. He's
yeah.
saying when you're praying for people with demons, make sure they understand that if you pray them out, or if you yourself are praying for God to remove a demon, you have to be willing to remove the things that the demon used to get in: your weaknesses, your vices, your sins, your insecurities, your
Mm-hmm.
abuse, your unforgiveness, the shame, the guilt, the lusts, the spirit spouses, all the things that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not willing to shed those, the demon's just going to come back. So these people think that we're just like praying for like demons, and then we don't believe that Jesus did the work. Yes, that's what we're calling on. We're calling on the finished works
Yeah,
of Jesus on
just
the cross
exactly.
to help this person not only be delivered from the demon, but be delivered from the aftermath of that, and to rebuild a life in Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
not just pray a demon away and then go back to doing what you're doing. If you're going to do that, then I know this deliverance minister, as much as I care about you, you're not ready and I can't help you. Come back. And I say this with love, come back when it's bad enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I have seen people when they've come to me, and I believe that they were within days or weeks of being dead, whether from suicide or the demon literally throwing them into
Doing
traffic or
something,
something.
exactly. Oh yeah.
And so what these people need to know who teach this type of thing is, when you encounter somebody demonic, if you are a spirit-filled Christian, you see demons in people. You feel them. All of us have met somebody who says, man, that guy gave me the creeps. Or did you see that
Mm-hmm.
lady's eyes? Well, what is that? Well, mental illness. So you're a Christian, but you believe in mental illness? Well, no. Well, what is that? You're either
Yeah.
calling the person crazy or you're saying they have a demon. And so what do? Just say, oh, the finished works of Jesus took care of this. Anyway, lady, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
No. When you see that, you have to look at yourself and say, God called all of us
Mm-hmm.
to be deliverance ministers. Now, you can't get in over your head, but we can all pray for people. In a pinch, if you were on a deserted island and the person was with you that had a demon, you got 2 choices. You better pray that demon away from that person and introduce them to Jesus, or that demon and that person are going to tear you apart,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't be in the same space. Like sometimes I have to remove myself when people don't want deliverance, but they want to keep the demon around. I can't be around that person.
And it really bothers me when people, share their testimonies and then people don't believe them, or they get the backlash of something like this. You know how vulnerable that is to say where you've been and the things that you've done. It's almost like being an alcoholic, the things that you have to, admit in groups, and what
Yeah.
you've done, for the drugs or the alcohol, and now you live a different life. It's almost as if they don't believe you. It's like a story you're making up or something. Like, that really bothers me
It
when people
does.
do that.
And do you know what sucks? is I could walk into an AA meeting tonight and say, my name's Anthony. I'm an alcoholic and I'm here because my life has become unmanageable. I have sinned against my wife. Alcohol has caused me to do horrible things. I've been abusive to my kids. One day I was drunk and drove with my kids in the car and they were screaming and crying because I almost rolled the truck. I got drunk the other day and got angry and punched my wife in the face. I have basically given up on God. I hate everybody. I stole money at work. And the people in the AA meeting are going to go, been there, done that.
And people like
Do
this,
that at church.
yeah. Oh.
Is it? Are you listening, Christians?
Mm-hmm.
Because if one of you stumbles upon this, do that at church. Do that in your church, Mr. Minister that I was picking on, the second guy.
Yep,
Let
exactly.
somebody walk into your church and do that. And let your pious smug behind say, well, Jesus, well, let me just introduce you to Jesus. They want to meet Jesus, but they got to get some stuff off of them.
Exactly.
And they got to trust you that you are safe with their shame. But
yeah.
if you understand what deliverance is, you understand, as we say every week, there is a series of doors that demons have to get you to open in order to gain that level of access.
And that's almost seem like it's just the norm now. Like it's like, oh, that's just normal. Like they're not putting two and two together. Like, hey, there's something going on in this world, and we need to get it together.
And so let me do this. I want to quote a good pastor, old school Derek Prince. If you don't know who Derek Prince is, go online, look up Derek Prince, old school dude, and most unassuming. And I'm going to be kind of what I want to say, kind of biased maybe, or kind of, I don't want to sound bigoted, but this dude looks like a nerdy old white pastor. Like if you saw him, like he reminds you of like the old school 70s televangelist types guys. But that is not what this guy is. This guy is a spiritual giant, and from the past, of course. But he says something crazy. He says one of the hardest persons to deal with is someone who has two spirits, the Holy Spirit and another spirit. And I'm going to say that again. No offense to these two ministers that I spoke of earlier, but you're no Derek Prince, man. This guy's forgotten more about the Bible than you know. He is saying that some of the hardest people to deal with are people that are Holy Spirit-filled Christians, but also have a demon driving the car. And there's a famous minister who did a sermon one time who said it best, where he said, any landlords in the building? He said, do you own the house that you're renting to somebody? Yes. So you own the house. You're the owner of the house, right? The Holy Spirit now owns your house. But do you have some tenants that are occupying your house right now? And when you think of it like that, so when people say, can a Christian be possessed? I'm on the side that a Christian can't be possessed unless they renounce their salvation. But I am definitely on the side of saying Christians can have a demon attached to them driving the car while the Holy Spirit inside you is screaming, stop the car. Let this demon out and let me drive again. And so Melissa and I, we right now, this hits home because we have some tenants that have just been awful. And so I think this is a good metaphor, Melissa. I don't know what to bring up because Melissa and I have recently got married. And so we're renting her place as she moved into my place, which is now our place. So everything's ours now, right? Because we're married, but we're renting her old place. And these tenants actually think that they're the owners, the way they've tried to get litigious with us and talk to us when they've made all the mistakes
Oh yeah,
and are
just
trying to leave the lease early and not pay. So wouldn't you say that's a good metaphor, and kind of use these people as you answer that question? Let the frustration of these people kind of speak the metaphor.
okay. I hope I do it right. So we had a young couple. Well, actually, it wasn't a young couple. It was one couple, one lady, not a couple. A She was a school teacher. She lived out of state. So she saw the ad. She did the application, the background check, salary, all that matches everything. I called her. We did a FaceTime. We had a conversation. I showed her the place on FaceTime because she wanted, to find, of course, you don't want to move here and then trying to find an apartment, like stay in a hotel or something. So we did the FaceTime and everything. And so she agreed to it. She signed the lease. One tenant, no pets, because I had just changed the carpet. I just replaced the carpet because
Yes.
the people that was there before, oh, can we have a puppy? Of course, no problem. Trying to be the nice one. And so they just kind of destroyed it wasn't bad. It just smelled, it was a puppy. So we just replaced the carpet because, we don't want anyone living there.
It's not
It's
pennies, it's
it's
thousands of
thousands of
dollars.
dollars to change carpet. And so no, it was one person, one parking spot, and no pets. And that was the main reason, excuse me, that I even leased to her, was because she said she didn't have a pet. I mean, other than, I had a good vibe from her at the beginning. So long story short, she put the deposit and well, I'll be here on this date. Okay, I'll have the keys ready. Give you
By the way, we live literally next door. That's how Melissa and I met. We are literal next door neighbors.
And I told her this. I said, "Are you going to have a problem with that? We're not nosy neighbors. We don't, if I see you, I'll speak. If you don't speak, we're just busy. I don't need to be your best friend. Like, I'm not seeing who's coming and going and things like that. No, no, I think it'd be great because I don't know anyone and, things like that." I say, "Okay, great." So she pulls up her and her boyfriend and her mom and her mom's boyfriend. So they were here, and I thought that they just drove her here because they had pulled the car. I thought the mom drove her car here, and then they flew back. And then, like a week later, the boyfriend is still here, and Anthony said, "Oh, I thought you said she didn't have any pets." And I was like, "Well, no, she said she didn't have any pets. She had a cat.
That was in the window.
It was in the
They had
window."
a perch for it in the window.
Didn't even try to hide that they had the pet. I don't think they realized that we literally lived next door. I think that she thought that she could move here and not, I guess she thought I was going to charge her more for two people and a cat and two parking spots. So kind of move forward. We had some AC issues. It was like 102 degrees here for about a week straight. So there's something wrong with the AC unit. So I felt bad for them. What do we do? Call our AC guy for an emergency. That's another couple $1,000s. So he had to come back. He just did a quick fix because they had so many repairs throughout that week. And so they were going to come back like on this date. We gave her the date, and this was my fault. I should have told her 24 hours before, but the guy said, "Hey, I'm on my way." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I called him like, "Well, I would prefer that no one is in the unit." Well, no one's going to be in the unit. The guy, 4 hours, it was a 5-hour job. 4.5 of the hours was outside and maybe 15 minutes into the unit. And I was sitting on the porch on the balcony while he went into and to do some cleaning and things like that. And so I guess she didn't like that. So she sent me a nice letter saying that I invaded her privacy as a tenant on section blah, blah, blah of the lease. And if I enter the apartment again without a 24-hour notice, that there would be further actions taken. And it just kind of went downhill from there. So I think what really happened was they were looking for someone to use. They was trying to find
Instead of
a leasing
private
company,
person.
private person, instead of going to a leasing company office, because they will charge you more for a 6 months lease. So right at the 6 months lease, actually on New Year's, Christmas Eve, she sent me an email in saying that they bought a house and that they're moving out and they can only give me a 30-day notice.
Instead
So
of 60, which is clearly in the
in the
lease.
lease, and also there's a fee for an early termination of the lease. You just can't leave me, and it's just kind of gone downhill from there. I'll let you finish. I'm starting to lose my
No,
voice.
well, no, you hit the nail on the
I
head
probably went
because
along too much, but
no, that's perfect because I said, let's use it as the metaphor.
mm-hmm.
So you are a person who has a good heart or good intentions or whatever the case may be, but you meet this being, this
Mm-hmm.
entity that asks permission to get into your life little by little. So this person, if we use this young lady, wouldn't it be funny if they listen? Because they're not quite out yet.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I let the boyfriend, we had to put the boyfriend on the lease, so she did come with a boyfriend. He had a Jeep, so there's 2 tenants. They took 2 parking spots, which I let them have, and I shouldn't have, and I let the flipping cat stay.
See, can you hear Melissa? You hear just like the frustration just keeps building. but here's what I'm saying. So she gained entry through the little app where you rent your place.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not using a leasing company. So because we're good people. We try to help people out, whatever. But you see, you open the door, then they came, paid some money. So we
Mm-hmm.
opened another door. Then they moved here. We opened another door. Then when they came with their fictitious lies, and when they told us that we weren't being on the up and up, and we had to remind them that their whole relationship with us started on a lie,
yeah.
then they backed up. But we accepted them even with the lie, trying to be helpful people. And then now these people are in our lives and they've made our lives hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's awkward. It's weird. And I said, I wanted you to tell this story because it's the perfect metaphor. That's what a demon will do. It'll come like it's somebody worthwhile having, and it'll knock on the door. You'll let it in. Can you please let me in? It reminds me of the black-eyed children.
Mm-hmm.
They knock on the door and they say, we're lost. Can we come in and call our mom?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, why are your eyes black? Get the hell away from here.
Exactly.
Except sometimes you don't see their eyes right away until you've let them in. And that's kind of what happens. And so for all of you people that don't believe in deliverance, there are listeners that we have and of countless podcasts and of countless deliverance ministries that were good people that through bad circumstances, they got into the occult because their parents were getting divorced and they felt lonely. And the only people that accepted them were these group of witches at their school. We could tell countless stories, but very few people that I've ever met just cold-blooded out of nowhere said, I was an atheist and I just woke up and said, I'm going to go worship the devil. They may have progressed from an innocent kid to white witchcraft and dark witchcraft and incantations, then a full-blown witch, then they're casting spells of death and destruction on people. But they started way back here. And then they do that. And these witches have welcomed in the devil. And then all of a sudden the devil comes to repay. Now they're regretting their decision and they come and find somebody like me. And I tell them, well, are you going to renounce all this stuff? And you watch the look on their face like, well, yeah, I probably should. But they love the power. They loved the relationship with this demon until it became, until the consequences came. And these are how we have to treat people. These are not Christians who are forgetting that the works of Jesus Christ are sufficient when he died on the cross. These are people that don't know how to spell cross, let alone know what that even means. We have to be kind and compassionate to these people. And even if somebody said, I just flat out chose to worship the devil, my empathy goes up for them because I know that comes.
Exactly.
I know what that comes with in the end. And I'm going to say this. You can believe me or not believe me. I could produce 40 people right now on a cell phone call that would say, this guy and our family was tormented by demons for our whole lives. Not just me, my family, my sister, my brother, my mother, cousins, relatives, grandparents have seen crazy things. Now, I believe those are familial spirits. I believe that these demons have been tormenting my family for generations, familiar spirits, whatever you want to call them. But we are not all crazy. We are not all schizophrenic.
Mhm.
These are things that have happened. And I could have 40 other people call and say, I had a full-fledged demon. Me, my husband, my sister-in-law, and this person all saw my daughter look at a picture on the wall and then laughed and then watched it fling across the wall, across the room. Like, so we're all liars? No.
Yeah.
By you saying stupid things like this, you are making people believe that Jesus isn't the hope. And
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
you want to call me evil and say I'm taking people to hell, let me tell
Mm-mm.
you this. I've been to hell. I've made mistakes that you perfect Christians have never made. I've done things that are so horrible. I ruined lives and families' lives, my own children's lives. I've been in the mud. But what's good is when I walk by the mud, I've been in that mud. And
Exactly.
so, hey, let me get in there with
With
you.
you.
It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable,
I'll
but
help you
I
get
know how to
out.
get out
Yep.
and I know how to get clean and we'll get out together.
Mhm.
I'm not the guy. Melissa's not the woman that's going to stand on the bank and go, aren't you
You.
going to
Yeah.
get out of there? And don't you know Jesus
Just.
already fixed this? So
Mhm.
just get out of the mud and have a good day. No, we're going to get in there with you.
Mhm.
And that's what we do here. And that's what deliverance ministry is. And I'm going to say this just as a kind of a parting shot, maybe. Anybody you see who is in deliverance ministry, it's easy to have all the common criticisms. And let me say this first. If you are a deliverance minister that is not turning people to Jesus, but you're turning them to your ministry, and you just want them dependent on you so they have to
Mhm.
get delivered every week, that
Yeah.
is demonic.
Yeah.
And you are probably the person that these
Mhm.
people are talking to. But that's not what I'm saying. If you are a true person who has chosen to fight demons because God called you to do so, those of you who don't do this work, you will never know the torment that people like us go through,
Mhm.
the demonic attacks, because we pick fights with your demons. And if you think that we're so pious and great that they run from us, they don't run from us, they run from Jesus.
Mhm.
That they don't come after us sometimes, that they don't cause havoc in our lives, that they don't um, try to show up sometimes and see if they can get you off your square. Demons feed on fear. That's why
Mhm.
they come at night and stand over your bed to scare the tar out of you,
Mhm.
because they get a rise out of you and they get you to doubt God. Even if it's for a
Exactly.
second,
Yep.
they're
Mhm.
energized, they're
Yep.
powered up like a battery.
That's
So
it.
we may be the people that know how to pray them away, but our families have suffered because we pick fights with demons.
Mhm.
My kids, because their dad chose to do this, had toys that would come on in the middle of the night. And that's fine until you go turn the toy upside down and there's no batteries in it. My son said, Dad, he had a little toy called Smarty. It was like this little construction table. It had little arms and it had wrenches, and you would tighten bolts and loosen bolts. And when I was praying for him before he went to bed, he goes, Dad, Smarty talks to me and moves around at night. And I'm like, well, let's take the batteries out. And when I turned it upside down, there was no batteries. And my ex-wife at the time came in and said, yeah, that thing moves. I took the batteries out 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
That's what happens when your dad chooses to be a minister and you choose to fight demons.
Mhm.
Uh, doesn't mean I taught my kids to be afraid. They're all demon fighting maniacs. My kids are like wild animals, wolves, like a wolf pack. But they learned that from fighting spiritual battles from
Mhm.
childhood.
Mhm.
And and
Yep.
so when you're picking on these deliverance ministers, these are the people that are choosing to do a job that some of you that either don't believe or don't really know what to do with it. They're choosing to do a job that you don't.
Mhm.
And there should, I can't say there should be gratitude, because no deliverance minister is asking for that. But, like, there's certain
Just
pastors that
some
are,
more respect about it.
well,
More
there's certain
understanding.
pastors that are not good at preaching, but they're good at going to sit at a hospital bed while somebody's dying.
Mhm.
So just stay in your lane.
Exactly. Yep, I
Just stay in
agree.
your lane. Certain pastors are great preachers and should not talk to the congregation when they leave the
Outside.
stage. They should literally go straight to their office and say, talk to the other pastors of this church, because they're just horrible in person,
Mm-hmm.
but they're so ordained and spiritually equipped to
Mm-hmm.
preach the gospel. But the second you start talking to them individually, I mean, I could think of one pastor that I worked for, that I've spoken of him a lot, because he didn't believe in demons. He didn't believe demons manifest, and he would almost mock people who came to the church and ask. But they finally learned to just turn those people to me and they just pretend like it didn't happen. But that dude could preach.
Mm-hmm.
He could stand on that stage and preach. He was polished, man. I mean, even down to the look. Like if you saw him on the street, you'd say that guy's probably a pastor. I mean, but he just was horrible with people. But he could plant churches and he can preach. So stay in your lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I could preach and help people with demons, a little bit of adult education, but I wasn't the best at all of that church politics stuff. Like people were saying, like, what about being like an executive pastor? No, I don't have that skill. Like I'm too brash. I'm too irreverent. That's not what I'm built for.
Yeah.
Put me over here and let me do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Corporations pay extra for wild, crazy people like me,
Mm-hmm.
but churches sometimes don't like people like me. So don't try to put me in roles. Worship pastors, these people are probably amazing in the music world. They could tap into the Holy Spirit and express it through the speakers of a church and move hearts. But a lot of those dudes, I mean, you asked them to preach, they'd start shaking, even though they stand on the same stage. And so you got to stay in your lane, because these new believers or these seekers, they need to know that there are people that you can go to. So let's kind of close with this. If you are somebody who doesn't believe in deliverance, if you're not careful, man, you could be worse than an atheist to a seeker. If somebody believes they have a demon, get them to somebody who can gently walk them through that. And why is that?
Yeah.
Because, man, this thought keeps me up at night when I don't want it to. I've helped countless people in my life. And trust me, I'm not patting myself on the back. That's a setup. This is the T-ball for the kick in the balls. I can't stand to think of people that I've turned away because of my arrogance, or because I wasn't in the mood, or because I was mad at the elders, so I'm going to go preach some sermon that wasn't godly, but that was mine. Yeah, and I could admit I've done these things.
Yeah.
I don't like it. But how many Christians did I turn away when I quote unquote fell from grace? I hate that term because it's not biblical. We fall into grace. When the Bible talks about people falling out of grace, he's not talking about people who sinned. That's a whole other thing. Do your homework on that.
Yeah.
But that's the term that the Christians use. But when I fell out of grace and fell in, out of the grace of the church and fell into the grace of God, I turned who knows how many people off, and turned them away. I don't want to be a minister who's worse than an atheist. I want to be a lay minister. I don't work for a church now. I just want to be a dude named Anthony, and Melissa just wants to be a woman named Melissa, who just helps you understand who Jesus is. And the way to do that is just say, we are here to help you with your struggles. These spiritual battles are those knocks on the door. And like we used with the example of our tenants, and I hope you get the emotion of Melissa. Once these people are in, that's the whole point of Melissa's story. They're hard to get out.
Yeah.
We can't just go, you guys change lied to us
and throw all the items out.
You can't just say, well, you lied to us 6 months ago. We kept you for 6 months, but now we're throwing you out. No, there's an eviction process, and they have to stop paying you until the process, which could take 6-7 months before you'd get any money, even if you did win.
And the kicker, I forgot to add this, they turned the electricity off in their name.
Yeah. And when it was 9 below zero.
9 below zero.
Yeah.
And thank God that I called them. I think you had a sticky note for me to follow up, and I called them because something told me, like, they they're not very nice people.
So
And my pipes could have burst because they're not living there. They've already
yeah.
moved out.
And that's exactly what a demon, and I'm not calling these people
Yeah,
demons,
exactly.
but
We're
the
not.
metaphor, that's exactly what a demon will do. Once you've let it in, they're hard to evict, and they will continue to do destruction. And now that these people in our metaphorical story know they're out, they're worse than ever. We're praying for February 20th. I mean, because that's when everything's legal and done. We can change the locks, and we will change the locks. We'll do all that. But here's what I'm saying, people. Like, we want you to call us no matter where you're at in the process. If this demon is a full-fledged tenant in your house and you want it evicted, we have to get you to Jesus, who has the eviction papers, but it's going to be a struggle to get them out. We don't do it ourselves. But if we could, people, we want it to be when they're first knocking on the door. When you first start to sense that something's not right, let's get them out then before we continue to give them permissions and let them grow roots in your life. And so if you're experiencing depression, could you have full-fledged biological depression? Sure. But that doesn't mean there's also not a spirit of depression behind it. And if you've never had biological diagnosable depression and now you're depressed, I would say that more than likely is a spirit of depression that's working on you. And what's it going to do? It's going to bring you a spirit that's going to say, I have the relief from this thing you're looking for. And that spirit may be alcohol. That spirit may be drugs. That spirit may be sex. That spirit may be prescription pain pills. That spirit may be something. Then you'll let that spirit in. Now there's two spirits that are now dwelling with you.
Or like an unhealthy relationship and just bring in their
spirit spouses, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is just tell you that if you've had this experience, listener, of these pompous, arrogant Christians that are telling you deliverance isn't real, you are looking for deliverance because you know what you're dealing with is real. You weren't you weren't seeking Jesus.
That's not a common conversation.
And then it wasn't like you were adding stuff to the menu. Like when you go to Village Inn and you say, "Oh, can I have 2 more eggs? I want Christianity, but can I also get an extra side of deliverance?" When you're looking for somebody to help you with demonic encounters, you already know you have a demonic encounter.
Yep.
If you are somebody nowadays with the internet, if you are somebody who just wants to fake a demonic possession, you're going to get more views putting up a fake demon video on YouTube to get 8 zillion clicks and views than you are to fake a deliverance on a stage somewhere in a church. If you want attention, there's better ways to get it. Maybe 30 years ago, that was the best way to get it, but not anymore. You could set up a camera and say there's a demon and flop around on the bed. More people are going to see that than they're going to see some video of a church. Because let's be honest, most people see the Christian videos on, our team scrolls through these things for me and finds these things for me. I don't really, I'll be honest with you. I kind of do it secondhand because I have a team of younger people that do that for me. But when they show me these videos, I see what people, they just scroll because, some of them can be boring, to be honest. If you just have some music and a Bible verse playing, if you're not a Christian, people just scroll that. And if they see this video, drama, acting,
exactly.
But if these people want views, they could go to the paranormal channel, post a demon video, and 8 billion people will watch it. So,
and most churches don't even show those on like when it's happening because it's so personal.
Yeah, they try not to.
It's try not. Like if it's live,
that's the ones that make the internet, the live streams.
The live stream, yeah.
Because somebody's watching on their computer and they're like, "Oh, I better record this." Some lady just started screaming and the pastor jumped off the stage and is praying a demon out of this lady. I'm going to record that and I'm going to release it. But most churches won't do that because of the personal, and that's why you don't see us on video. We want to be anonymous. We want our people to be anonymous, and we don't want it to be, here's our faces every week. We want Jesus. We want you to hear, Jesus through what we're doing. So if you are somebody, again, who is struggling, I hope that by talking about this topic, you see that we're not that, and that we are actually kind of annoyed by that too. And you need somebody to believe you. It's going to be us. we're going to suspend all disbelief here. We're going to
Mhm.
hear your story. We would humbly ask that tell us the truth. If you're somebody who wants attention, write me at deliveranceprojectpodcast@gmail.com. I will tell you which paranormal shows to send your story to. But we want true stories of people that are really struggling, because we're going to pray with you. We're going to introduce you to Jesus, and we are going to help you get the relief you need. And if it's not here, we're going to guide
We'll
you to
help
the
you.
places
Yeah,
that you can,
exactly.
because at the end of the day, this is not about becoming the next Joe Rogan podcast. This is about a little humble, anonymous little place for you to get the help you need, and then just share it with the next person who's
Mhm.
struggling. We don't want to be 8 zillion viewers. We
Mhm.
want it to be a kind of like a little secret.
Yeah,
Not
just
a
ever how many this could
yeah,
help people.
yeah,
We're not here
yeah,
for
yeah.
nothing but other than help to help
A
people.
hidden corner where
Uh-huh.
people that really need help can
A
find it,
safe place
a safe
to talk.
place, not trying to tell the best story, because we don't care.
And like you said, we stay in our lanes. If something that we can help you with, then we'll help. But if there's something different state, well,
Hmm.
hey, here's this person
Yeah.
or things like
We'll
that.
guide you
Yeah,
to, there's a
guidance.
deliverance map out there we've talked about. There's people all
Yeah,
over the world.
exactly.
We'll send you to that. Or if you need something different besides deliverance, I've worked all over the country in churches and preached at a lot of different churches. I can tell you almost a good church or two in almost every state. Sometimes in all the big cities, I can definitely
Mhm.
point you to 3 or 4 different places that I would go if I lived there.
Mhm.
And so I'll send you there. But
Mhm.
we just want to thank you for kind of hearing us out on this. Make sure that if you do have a story of your own, hopefully we've earned your trust, and we want you to reach out. That could be with a letter, an audio file. We are willing to do an interview with you, or simply just pray with you and your story never makes the air. We just
Yeah,
wanted to help the
exactly.
next
Yep.
person the
Mhm.
next time. Remember that if you're a pastor, get in the mud with people.
Mhm.
It's not that bad. And if you're honest, you were in that mud once upon a time too,
Mhm.
because that's when you found Jesus. Don't forget where you came
Exactly.
from.
Yep.
So, with that being
Mhm.
said, let's just remind you that this podcast is copyright The Struggle LLC. You could find out about The Struggle and all the things we do at thestruggleseries.com. Check out the website there. You can also buy books there at a discounted rate if that's something you're looking to do.
Mhm.
Special shout out to Todd K. Voiceovers for the voiceover work. We want to remind you that we are here every Wednesday on this podcast at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. The Struggle Series podcast is at 6 p.m. on Thursdays, Mountain Standard Time. So
Yeah.
check both of those out. Thank you so much for tuning in. And
Yeah.
we hope to see you next time. May God
All right.
bless you and bring you peace.
Thank you for listening to The Deliverance Project. Make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and we will see you next time.